The reason why you're all here is to hear Ginni Callahan talk about the magic of Baja. From wildlife and geology to tranquility, inspiration, and dedicated conservation, the Baja California peninsula of Mexico and the Sea of Cortez, from 1,000 miles long yin-yang of mountainous desert and sea, bringing together seeming opposites in a rich interconnected web. I get to introduce my friend Ginni Callahan. I've been on a number of trips with Ginni, including to New Zealand, and also I've been with her in Baja twice. She found sea kayaking when she found out it was, when she capsized an open canoe and found out that there might be better ways of paddling in the ocean. And now she runs Sea Kayak Baja and lives full-time in Loreto. And her company is passionately involved in local conservation and community development. So she's also making a difference down there. So I'm going to turn it over to Ginni. You can take it away.
Well, thank you, Fran, and thank you, Minnesota Rovers Outdoor Club, for having me on today. It's quite a privilege to be chatting with such a storied group. Fran was telling me a little bit about your adventures, and it sounds like a number of you are familiar with Baja, whether from a paddling or snorkeling, diving, adventuring perspective. Presenting my story. All right, so I just want to say, as we're sliding into fall, that we'll be thinking of our northern paddling friends and rovers. And anytime you're ready for a nice warm dose of sun, we'll hold a space for you south of the border. We'd love to give you a nice Baja welcome. Meanwhile, I'd like to invite you on a journey tonight. Baja, including what is Baja, what do I think is magical about it, my Baja story, and a pretty exciting vision of an adventure coming up. So what is Baja? Baja California is the second longest peninsula in the world after Kamchatka. It's longer than Florida or Italy. It's about 800 mile long finger of land on the western side of Mexico. The word Baja just means lower, and Baja California differentiates it from Upper California, which is now in the US. At one point, it was all California before there was US and Mexico. So the Baja California Peninsula and the Gulf of California, or the Sea of Cortez, form this partnership, this yin-yang of desert and sea. There are two states in Baja. The northern one is simply called Baja California, and the southern is Baja California Sur. In the middle of that southern state is this cute little village called Loreto, and that's where I live. There's a national marine park there with 5 islands. Visually, it's like Grand Canyon meets the sea. It's spectacular. The mountains rise almost a mile high, not too far away from the ocean itself. Just the view from the islands is, I love it. Mexico is also one of the planet's mega diverse countries. It's got between 10 and 12% of the diversity of flora and fauna of the planet. In the sea, upwellings of mineral-rich waters are stirred through the Gulf by winds and currents. These waters meet the sunlight, which sparks tremendous plankton growth. Some friends of mine who are doing plankton net hauls, almost every time they haul in and look under the microscope, they're finding new things. You can see this swirl in the middle of the Gulf. That's actually plankton viewed from space. So the National Marine Park of the Bay of Loreto and Loreto are kind of right there in the heart of it. That plankton forms the base of a rich food web that supports a variety of animals. This is a Mexican fishing bat. It is the only officially classified marine mammal that flies. It gets all of its nutrients from the sea using those big hind feet. It drags the the water for at night for any little fish or juvenile lobsters or anything that are up near the surface. And of course, the blue whale, the largest animal ever to have habited the planet, feeding fairly low on the food chain, eating just a little krill. Of Baja. About 30 million years ago, 3 tectonic plates collided. The Farallon plate and the Pacific plate were subducted or shoved underneath the North American plate. It melted and erupted a line of volcanoes further inland, building a range of mountains. However, between the Farallon and the Pacific plate, that kind of pink line at the bottom, that was a spreading rift. And when that rift got subducted under the North American plate, it kept spreading, and it eventually ripped off part of the edge of the continent. As that land spread, the center in between dropped and the sea filled in. And that gives us the Sea of Cortez, or the Gulf of California. The processes that form these mountains and islands are still happening, which is part of the magic of Baja. I tried to map the National Marine Park with the islands at one point, and the geology doesn't actually hold still well enough to make a decent map of the beaches. They're changing, they're really dynamic. So what is magical about Baja? I've sort of separated it into a couple of categories. One is kind of the heart-catching, one is the interesting. There's the openness and spectacular mountain seascape. There's the night sky, the patience of cacti, abundant wildlife, the unfiltered connection with nature, just from the details to the grand scale, and the way just living simply and living outside opens the senses and the heart to what feels universal and essential. The way human relationships here form and flourish. So culturally, Baja is fascinating. There's these mysterious cave paintings that are World Heritage listed. The indigenous people that the missionaries first encountered didn't know who made these paintings. They attributed to the race of giants because they're so big and they're so high up. Nobody really knows who painted them. But scientifically, there's a lot of interest, endangered species, endemic creatures. This one only lives on Montserrat Island. The Catalina Island rattleless rattlesnake only lives on that island. And the Montserrat chuckwalla only lives on a few of the islands in the National Marine Park. Conservation is a key piece of living down here with the National Marine Park and the research that goes on and the efforts to protect. So the National Marine Park, or Parque Nacional Bahía del Reto, is 5 islands. It was formed 25 years ago now. Fernando Arcas was instrumental in forming the park and in also doing some blue whale research back before people were really aware that blue whales were here. As the fishermen were going, wow, that's a large thing. What is that? But here's one of the ways they document. The whale has a different fin and also slightly different pigmentation of their skin. And they've got notebooks of the whales, what their names are and how long they've been down here. Fernando actually had school kids come out and name the whales in an effort to kind of connect the community with wildlife. Some individuals have been down here for more than 30 years. In 2005, the entire Sea of Cortez, 244 islands, was listed as World Heritage on that list. And this is a quote from the World Heritage listing. The property is of striking natural beauty and provides a dramatic setting. Oops, I can't actually read that screen. Due to the rugged forms of the islands, with high cliffs and sandy beaches, contrasting with the brilliant reflection from the desert and the surrounding turquoise waters. The Sea of Cortez is home to 695 vascular plant species. The cardon is also called the Mexican giant cactus. It's the largest cactus in the world. And these plants, and there are more than any other marine or island property on the World Heritage List, which is pretty impressive for a desert. The diversity of forms and colors is complemented by a wealth of birds and marine life. This isn't as tasty as its name might suggest. Equally exceptional is the number of fish species, 891, 90 of which are endemic. The Sea of Cortez contains 39% of the world's total number of marine mammals, and a third of the world's marine cetacean species, so whales and dolphins. You can see the fish hanging in this humpback whale's baleen. My Baja story. So I've been coming down here since the last century. About 23 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me, he was a kayak guide, introduced me to Loreto and to Baja. And after that, I worked for about 10 years, guiding trips in double kayaks, a lot of it about the food, and I started coaching, the other kayak guides. In 2007, I started Sea Kayak Baja Mexico to fill a need. I'd been coaching in the States where folks would ask, can we come to Baja, but we want to do an adventure. We don't want to go in double kayaks. We want to actually paddle. So Sea Kayak Baja Mexico started to meet that need. It started with a dream to provide paddling enthusiasts the best equipment, a world-class location, and enriching experiences. We like adventure and beautiful water. So the first Sea Kayak Baja Mexico trip was November 2007. I was living on the beach and running, I guess it's an outdoor center if there's no roof on it, right? So opened the downtown store in 2009. That was the extent of our retail. In 2010, Santiago became the first Mexican to earn his BCU 4-star leader award. And since then, he's been joined by Marcos, Yuri, Edgar, Ramon, and Jano. October 2010 was the first Loreto Kayak Symposium with classes. December 2016, Steve McDonald came to give our crew their Coach 1 training. So our guides are also coaches. We opened the waterfront location in December 2018. And in 2019 of January, held the first Loreto Guides Gathering, complete with a nice windy day for games and whatnot. That summer, we held a lot of kayak club courses, just trying to get local folks access to the water and excited about being out and connecting with the nature. Ramon joined the team in 2011, Marcos in 2013, Edgar in 2015, Maria in 2016, Ano in 2017, and all these guides are still with us. This is a tremendous team. Jorge joined us in 2019. Also in 2019, we partnered with Sea Trek in Sausalito, who brought Art and Ruben to the team, and Isaura joined us on the guiding team in 2020. In August of 2019, also with the help of an inheritance, I purchased a piece of land where my computer keeps advancing without my approval to put the Future Training Center. We did another coach course with Dave Brown, updating the new team. In our new store, we had the second Loreto Guides Gathering in 2020, and of course, another play day. We continue to add new routes, exploring Magdalena Bay on the Pacific side. and the Northern Gulf. We continue to train guides and any paddlers in safety, navigation skills. And we continue to connect with friends who've been visiting us for a long time. And two of the people in this picture were actually with us on the very first Sea Kayak Baja Mexico trip that ever went. The paddle club, Club de Canotaje de Loreto, as one of our favorite projects. It's getting local folks out onto the water just to connect with nature. Kayaking here is kind of seen as an expensive tourist sport. We're trying to change that with games and fun. Well, it happened to all of us, March 2020. COVID hit. It hit pretty hard. Our business went to absolute zero, and we lost the storefront. And on a personal level, my husband said he wanted a divorce, all in the same week. But we go on, as we know. After the storm, we sometimes get rainbows, which bring into our lives beauty and hope. And we carry on. So 14 years ago, this is a bit of a personal journey. I had around with breast cancer, and I came to Baja to heal. This time, I went to the desert and to the sea to heal again. I took time to go inside, to go deep, to breathe, to reflect on what feels like it has meaning. I took a desalinator and fishing gear and took a month paddling down the coast and to remote islands, processing thoughts, feelings, photos. Though I didn't see people, I wasn't alone. I spent a lot of time watching nature, and my good buddy Moose helped share the load. We enjoyed my birthday dinner on a remote island and invited a friend. Our friend made really good ceviche. Along the way, I got comfortable with long crossings. And my last solo day, I met a friend with a sailboat, Mike, on Compass Rose, who would prove to be a key player in a future adventure. Back in Loreto, we each did what we could to get by. A small corps moved on to the base of operations to reduce living costs. We're lucky enough to live close enough to the sea to where we just wheeled our kayaks down and would paddle the 9 nautical miles out to Carmen Island and camp out. That's social distancing at its finest. In the heat of the summer, we jumped in the water often to cool off and sort of created a new sport. By towing our kayaks behind us and snorkeling, we could explore really remote reefs and points that we'd never seen before. And I saw a bunch of different animals that I hadn't seen. Giant barnacle larva. It looks like it's about 4 feet across, but it's only about 1 inch. And a stone triggerfish, which has these really crazy patterns on it and beautiful. I started doing some training paddling, one of which was 50 nautical miles out around Carmen Island and back in 16 hours without touching land. We hatched a plan, this plan to paddle up the coast together as a team of guides and folks who wanted to join us. And we paddle up Santa Rosalia, and then from there, the guides would get a ride back, and I would paddle across and get a ride home with my friend Mike on a sailboat. Well, that was the plan, but the wind had other plans. So I paddled 3 days up the coast and then turned around and sailed back to Loreto, which was also great fun. So the bottom loop was what we did all as a team. And then Ruben and Jorge and I got a ride up to Santa Rosalia. And they paddled out with me to San Marcos, Isla San Marcos, and Isla Tortugas. Here we are camping on the soft sand of Isla Tortugas, 15 miles from anywhere. And from there, I launched at midnight to paddle. So you can see Tortugas there. And then the guys went back. I launched at midnight to paddle across. When the sun rose, I'd been following the stars. And once the sun was up, I could follow the sun and then my compass, and then eventually saw the other side. I'll have a video at the end if you want to see that. It's a 3-minute video of the crossing, the training and the crossing. And I met Mike for dinner on the other side. So launched at midnight and made it to the other side for dinner. And then took a few days to sail back to Loreto. And back in Loreto, we consolidated and we had a meeting room, but we had no trips, so no meetings. And then we had lost our storefront. So we just put the store stuff in the meeting room and created a reception area. You get to see the full spectrum of the company. You get to be welcomed into that reception area. And we've moved the meeting room back near where the warehouse is, so that right from your meeting, you can go pick your gear. So this is my Baja story. And Baja has also woven a story inside of me. I thoroughly enjoy traveling, meeting people, playing together, learning together. The difference in Loreto is that through paddle sports, I feel like I can make a real difference in the community, in people's career opportunities, in the local environment. Through the currents of ocean and currents of people ebbing and flowing through Loreto, I feel like I can make some small contribution for the planet and its inhabitants. And this belief gives me purpose. The COVID pause gave me time not only to reflect, but also do some kayak access research in coral health and on geologically recent climate as evidenced through storm impact on marine fossils. And just this year, we had a paper published in the Journal of Marine Science and Engineering with the catchy title of Upper Pleistocene and Holocene Storm Deposits Eroded. It was really just an excuse to paddle out to a remote island again and spend some time measuring things. In trying to bridge the culture gap of people growing up in Loreto and never having been to the islands and not knowing what it means to have a national marine park at their doorstep, or understanding the importance of keeping plastic out of the sea, the Loreto Club de Canotaje, Loreto Paddle Club, is getting people on the water to make those experiential and emotional connections for people. And this is our club leader crew. Been local volunteers that now take other folks out on trips. So the vision, we're on the cusp of something huge. And this presentation is actually the first time I'm bringing this vision to the larger public out of just a few key people, and kind of see the reception it gets. I believe that part of our struggles today come from our perception of things as separate, the scientific from the spiritual, environmental versus economy, us versus them. I believe that the way forward on this small blue marble together is to recognize that these are all interconnected elements of one big, amazing entity. To care for one's neighbors, to care for oneself, to care for the environment is ultimately to support the community. Science gives us the eyes and to understand and see the amazing workings of something that is spiritually nourishing. Programs envisioned at this center, this vision, aim to celebrate and foster these connections. This vision involves buying an old hotel on the Loreto waterfront and creating a business and community center tentatively called Life Connected, or Vida Conectada. This is the property. And what keeps superimposing is the vision for it. There's a lot of elements, including Sea Kayak Training and Expedition Center, of course, a park visitor center, sustainable businesses, conference and education buildings, and an interpretive trail through a restored estuary to the Loreto waterfront. Actually, I'm going to go back a few slides. So the top left this little property up here is, that's the one I own, but would like to turn back into an estuary, build the rest of the elements that you see. So what are the, you know what, I'm actually gonna take a moment and stop this slideshow from moving so fast. Transitions, bear with me for just a moment. Transitions. On mouse click. All right, and we'll go back to slideshow. Not the whole slideshow. Technology. Okay, so if folks are interested in hearing more about this vision and this dream to connect people to the natural landscape, and I'm not articulating it very well, and my slides keep moving forward, which is making it difficult and distracting. But the first step is to secure the land that the hotel is on, which we could have the help of Mexican nonprofit organization Pro Natura to hold that while we develop the visitor center. Hope to model low resource demand, minimal waste system, food sourcing from local ranches, and sustainable fisheries. If you'd like to hear more, come back. Yeah, please email me. And my slideshow just wants to run through, so maybe we can chat, but I'd like to just say thank you to the Minnesota Rovers Outdoor Club and to Fran, and to all of you who've come paddling with us, and those who have sent donations to keep supporting us through the tough COVID time. Also to my amazing Sea Kayak Baja Mexico team, continues to grow and to. So thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in Baja. And I am quite happy to field questions or talk more about the vision or anything about Baja, or anything else.
Is the culture still Spanish in the town of Loreto?
Yes, it is a tourist destination, not like the big resort tourist destinations, but it is supported a lot by tourism and also by some commercial fishing. There are a couple of resorts outside of town, but the town of Loreto itself is still definitely Baja, definitely Mexico, delightfully so. And I spend most of my days operating in Spanish and not English. So actually starting to forget a few English phrases and words, and we speak in Spanglish a lot here too. Oh, I see some questions here too. Oh, the rare vaquita porpoise. The vaquitas are further north, if they still exist. At one point they were saying they were down to 20 something, and Greenpeace has been trying to keep those alive. Let's see, sharks, whale sharks tend to hang out. There's a place near La Paz. There's just shallow water, and the plankton that the whale sharks feed on tend to congregate in a certain place. So there you can reliably go and swim with the whale sharks at certain times of year. Also near La Paz, there's a sea lion colony that's popular to swim with, and the sea lion colony to people, not quite so interactive as the one in La Paz, but people do dive and snorkel near this one as well. Loreto's big thing is blue whales and fin whales. Loreto is one of the few, or if only, places on the planet where blue whales hang out close enough to shore for people to reliably actually go out and see them. Like on a given day, you can get in a motorboat and go to where they tend to hang out. And that's pretty rare and special.
So are you currently in Baja California now, or this is Quentin? I don't have my video on, but
Hi, Quentin. I am, and I can turn my computer around, and can you see the palm trees?
oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah. It's a little bit windy right now, but I'm in Loretto. I actually sold my farm this summer and am full-time down here.
Oh, cool. Wow. How'd you learn all your Spanish? Did you just in place there? Or
Well, I learned the first, it's usually the bad words that you learn first, and the guides.
Yeah. I'm Czech. I learned that from my mom. Actually, she's sitting right here.
Yeah, cool. That was the first bit, like learning by working with Mexican guides. And then when my boss asked me to start training the new guides who didn't speak English, then that upped my game in both coaching and Spanish. And now that I run a company here with several employees who don't speak English, that's helped a lot too in motivating and correcting and educating. And I can get by pretty well in Spanish now. And if anybody wants to practice their Spanish on trips, all of our guides, I contracted with a manager this year for the first time ever. We have a manager. Hallelujah. Thank you, Pamela. You're awesome. And she and I are the only two who aren't from Mexico. But for the longest time, I was the only one in the company not from here.
Yeah, somebody asked, I guess, what was the best time to visit Baja? I guess one of the rovers had a question.
Oh, I see there. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for big megafauna, like the blue whales, fin whales, they tend to be late January to early March. But what brings them is the krill and the richness in the waters in the Sea of Cortez. And what generates that is the wind and the upwelling. So December through February tend to be the windiest times. You can still have beautiful weeks, but you can also, if you're out on a kayak trip, end up being on a beach for a couple of days and just waiting for the wind to calm down. If you want warmer water and amazing snorkeling now, like October, early November, or April into May are really good. Spring break, if you want to share Loretto and the islands with a lot of people, but it tends to be pretty good weather. And then into the summer, if you like to spend a lot of time in the water snorkeling and don't mind finding some shelter in caves in the day, or even paddling in the evening or at night, from May into June. It's just a different kind of kayaking trip, but it can also be really fun and interesting.
Ginny, do you do any birding along the way? And do you have interesting birds in that part?
We do. We've got a combination of seabirds and desert birds, migratory birds and residents. So the blue-footed booby, which is not only in the Galapagos, but here. The yellow-legged gull is actually endemic to the Gulf of California and the Salton Sea. We've got magnificent frigate birds, which are pretty cool seabirds, and brown boobies as well. Oh, we've got the Brewster's brown booby, which is a subspecies of the brown booby that lives on the west coast of Mexico, including Baja. And then we've got all like the winter migratory birds as well, like the spotted sandpipers and the willets and those guys. On the Pacific side of Baja, there's the Pacific lagoons where the gray whales come in to calve, and there's just mangroves, miles and miles of mangroves. So the frigates actually nest there. We have one trip, actually we're running it several times this coming year. It's waves and wildlife, and the migratory birds there are just amazing. And you can see the frigates right on their nest. They're so amusing. They just kind of pile all in together, perched in the mangroves. And depending on the guide you're with, we all have different specialties, but some are quite into the birds. Yeah, and there's a guy in Loretto who does special bird tours. There's some estuaries in the area where you'll have snowy egrets, great egrets, great blue herons, tricolor egrets, reddish egrets, ibis, and on and on.
So there's also a very, very rare bird that was reared in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin area, known as the Doug Noel,
Uh-oh.
once president of the Minnesota Rovers and has migrated permanently down to the Baja area. And you people can see him on the screen with his lovely wife, Claudia. This is ex-Rover president Doug Noel. And that's where we're going to go visit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where are
Also,
you?
just as a little plug, they live in Cabo Pulmo and they own an Airbnb. So if anyone needs a place to stay, they are great hosts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, as Lori just said, we do have a Airbnb down there, and it's beautiful. We're actually getting hit with a tropical storm right now. We're actually not there, but we'll be heading back in a few days. But yes, I've enjoyed the presentation. Baja is a truly amazing place, and if you're interested in coming down to see the southern part down by Cabo Pulmo, please come and check us out.
Yeah, Cabo Pulmo is another amazing conservation story. Like the fishermen of the community. How long have you been there? You've probably been involved in this.
We've been there about 6 years now. So yeah, it predates us by a long time, but yes, it's amazing history.
Yeah, the fishermen just said, okay, we're not going to fish at all. We're just going to turn this into a reserve. And the volume and variety of fish that have come back been mind-boggling and beautiful. The Loreto National Marine Park was the first national protected area in the country where the local people petitioned the government to make it a park to manage the resources for long-term like sustainability. And then that was a model for other places like Cabo Pulmo. And of course, we still have the fishing. We haven't closed the fishing here just because, well, lots of reasons. But I really admire Cabo Pulmo's commitment to conservation.
One of the things about Pulmo is they have fish quantities that are called bait balls, and they're like a tornado. Have you ever seen any of those underwater? I guess they're just incredible.
Amazing. One of the best scenery in the world for me. I am a diver, and so that's for me is the best. Is the best that I never seen in other part of the world. It was literally 1 million in November. The peak is in November. Sometimes are like 1 million.
Wow. It's amazing to be inside of those bait balls and just see silver all around you as they move.
Yeah, it's like a dream. It's like a dream.
So I see a question, are people vaccinated and what's the COVID risk? Many people are vaccinated here, at least speaking for Loreto, which is where I know best. And I've just gotten my second vaccine and most people are getting vaccinated just out and about. Most people are wearing masks. Masks are mandatory inside of stores. I think in a population of 20,000 in Loreto, I think we're down now to about 5 cases. And the further south in Baja, the caseload has been dropping considerably.
Yeah, that is very important. Do you want to ask something about the blue whales? The increase. Did you see the number of blue whales every year? Do you think is increasing? They coming more and more. Every year is more, or more or less is the same. The number of blue whales that come in Loreto.
Last year, the numbers were back up again. For the last 5 years before that, they had been slowly diminishing, and the whales had been getting skinnier and skinnier to where you could actually see the ridge of their spine and almost hollow, which was really disheartening. And the researchers were also like scanning for whale poo and weren't finding a lot of solid matter. It was more liquid. So the whales had been eating more like jellyfish than actual krill for a few years. Last year that turned around, the krill was crazy. The whales were fat and there were more whales. So that turned around about a 4 or 5 year trend, and people were very excited about that. An interesting long-term trend is that we're seeing more and more humpback whales in the Sea of Cortez.
Oh, yeah.
Blue whales, yeah. The blue whales come and go.
In Cabo Pulmo, they coming to give birth now.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
the last couple of years, their numbers have been way up. We don't get the blue whales down there, but the humpbacks numbers have definitely been going up.
That is
There's a resident, yeah. There's a resident population of about 300 fin whales. Somebody's holding up a whale. About 300 fin whales that live further north in the Gulf, and sometimes they come down here. Just yesterday, we put our first rental out on the island, our first multi-day rental, and passed a mom calf fin whale pair out there already. Spectacular.
Amazing. I'm so happy. I love the whales.
Me too.
And also that sea lions are unique. It's a unique. The interaction with them is amazing in the wild, in the wilderness. Baja is magic, like you say, is come inside your heart. Like, they say about Africa, and it's true. In Africa, it's happened that you miss so much. You have to come back more and more. But Baja do the same. It's incredible. Do the same.
Well said.
Do they ever do kayak? I was up north of Seattle, and you could rent a kayak and go out and see the whales. Do they do that down there? I imagine they do. In Baja, or do they try not to disturb them? Or
So in Loreto, you can get on a motorboat that has specific permits to go see the whales, and also on the Pacific side, the motorboats that can take you out to see whales, the captains are trained on how to approach the whales, or better yet, how not to approach the whales, so that their movements aren't disturbed, and then how to take turns. So if there's been a boat near a whale for a while and another boat comes near, if you've been there for 15 minutes, move away and let the other boat be near. And the whales will often be the ones who have to say, because like they can just leave, but also just not trying to follow the whale all the time. Just if you just sit and turn your motor off, the whales will go about their business. They'll be more relaxed. They'll spend more time at the surface. We'll get to see them more. And the captains here have really bought into that and understand that and support each other in those behaviors. Kayaking with whales isn't technically permitted. If you happen to be paddling somewhere and a whale crosses your path, well, it does. But you can't actually go out and chase them down in kayaks. If somebody with a whale license or a whale permit sees a kayak or a kayak group behaving that way, they will report it. And they also report on each other. So it's actually a really good culture of taking care of the whales here. And in the Pacific lagoons with the gray whales also, it's not permitted to kayak with them, but the motorboats can.
I can say that when I was on a trip with Ginni's organization in late February, early March of 2020, right before the pandemic, we were paddling and we saw a number of blue whales from a distance, and then we suddenly found ourselves in the midst of a bunch of blue whales, and it was both amazing and a little bit scary. We grouped up and tried to keep a little bit of distance because those things are big, really big, and kind of noisy too. But it was quite amazing. We were right there. I mean, we caught the migration. We were kind of lucky to do that. And some people in our group before our kayak trip had gone to the Pacific side and done one of the tours that Ginny is talking about with the gray whales there, and that was pretty cool. And people in the motorboats seemed to be pretty respectful of it. So yeah, you can have some close whale encounters. It was pretty amazing.
So there's a question in the chat here. Oh, maybe someone's answering it right here. What is the best way to get to Baja from Cali? Plane, train, automobile?
So from Cali is in like California.
I guess, yeah.
Okay.
Or even from Minnesota, what's the best way?
From Minnesota. Well, Alaska Airlines flies from LA to Loretto. So if you can get to LA, LAX, that's pretty straightforward. There's a couple other airlines that are just starting to come in. I think, is it American that's coming from the East Coast? And then there's one that's coming from, WestJet comes from Canada. Straight down, just hops right over the US. Although right now to go to Canada to come to Mexico is with COVID isn't the best way. From the border, if one is driving, it takes me 2 days to get from the border down to Loretto. The bus does it in 20 something hours, but that's brutal. There's also San Diego, there's a cross-border express. So if you flew into San Diego, you could take an Uber. It's not that far to a border crossing where actually you check in on the US side and then you walk across basically this border bridge and end up in Tijuana airport and fly from there to a number of local locations, including Loretto. I do that once a week. So on our website, seakayakbaja.com, there's a Getting Here page that has some of that information and some links as well.
I'm guessing, Ginny, you might have a compromising story or two about Fran. Can you share one with us? Or vice versa, whoever beats it. Or a fun story.
I have a New Zealand story. Does that count?
Sure.
Oh, Fran, you're making faces.
I'm just wondering, all the time in New Zealand, but go ahead.
What was the name of that boat, the kind of boat that you ended up paddling?
Enigma.
The Enigma. Yeah. So when our group got to New Zealand, they're all New Zealand boats. It was great. Support the local economy, but they're different from the boats we're used to paddling. And it took our group a little bit of adjusting to make friends with the boats. Not that there's anything wrong with them. They're just slightly different. Yeah, and I remember Fran and the Enigma taking a little while to get used to each other, but in the end, I think it was a happy relationship. What do you think, Fran?
Well, I think it was a relationship that we both tolerated
Okay.
because it was New Zealand. But the day that we surfed and I got to paddle a Romani, the day that we surfed on the Pacific side, I felt a lot more at home.
We had 2 Romanis on the trip, and that's because we sailed with them on a sailboat from Mexico. Yeah, but the rest of them were New Zealand boats. My Romani
Bring your paddle, Fran?
What?
Did you bring your paddle?
Well, it wasn't mine, but I brought a Greenland paddle that belonged to a friend of mine that broke down into several pieces. Yeah.
Cool. I might have known.
Yeah. No.
Okay, now you get to tell one about Ginny.
Well, this is kind of an amazing story. When we were in New Zealand, we had a number of things didn't happen the way they were planned, and we went and we didn't get to do a full circumnavigation of the island that we wanted to go around. and there were a lot of different things that went wrong, including weather. And we realized that we were going to need to get to a safer area, and that we weren't going to be able to go around the north end. We were going to be coming into storms and 4-meter waves in a section of tall cliffs with no ways to get off the water if things went bad. So we decided to go back and shelter in a more sheltered area, but we still wanted to get to the Pacific side. So we made a decision that Ginni was going to hitchhike back and get our vehicle and the trailer and take the boats across, and then we were going to go across, and several of us were paddling. And so she moved half of the group across and then came back. There were some others of us who were out paddling while this was happening. And the serpentine belt went out on the truck in the middle of the small town in New Zealand. Okay. And Ginni managed to hitch a ride with the mail guy to the only town in New Zealand that might be able to have a serpentine belt to replace it, that also happened to have a van with a trailer hitch that could haul the trailer back across. And when we got off the water, it was a little bit confusing. The truck was gone and there was this van. And in the meanwhile, the other people on the other side of the island who were out of communication didn't know why things were taking so long. And we showed up in this van with all of the boats on the trailer and pretended that nothing had happened while they were puzzled. But anyway, it was kind of amazing. I thought it was quite remarkable the way Ginni pulled all of that off.
That's the kind of guide I want. Dedicated.
The universe was beneficial that day. Yeah, that was one of my most challenging guiding moments.
Sounds like you came through.
Yeah, I think that trip had some challenging guiding moments. Yeah.
If any of you get Ocean Paddler magazine, there were actually 4 articles. I've been writing for them for a few years. That trip was rich enough to generate 4 articles on decision making from different aspects. Yeah, that was a good one.
So.
Oh, I have a video for the crossing. Do you guys want a 3-minute video?
Sure.
We do.
The crossing from the Sea of Cortez, yeah. So the music, I got permission from the singer-songwriter to make the video of it. And it's not like telling a story so much as it is trying to share the experience of, let me get to the beginning of it. So all the footage here, except for one little clip of me surfing, because it kind of goes with the music, is from this last summer of watching wildlife, training, and paddling with my team. And let me share screen here. Share. And, okay. You guys seeing a couple of paddlers on a sunrise?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Here we go. Cue the music.
Oh, mom, I'm gonna make it. Mom, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mom, I'm gonna make it. Let's forget this land of worries. Spend an evening by the sea. I'm a sucker for the sunset, and the waves, they set me free. And I say, don't stop now, 'cause I can feel we're gonna make it. Kick your feet up on the dashboard. Might as well enjoy the ride. Get a room right by the ocean, with my lover by my side. And baby, don't stop now, 'cause I can feel we're gonna make it. Baby, let your worries go, live like the wind blows. I can feel we're gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Feel the fire and the fury. I got everything I need. Open arms because I'm heavy. Open road ahead of me. And baby, don't stop now, 'cause I can feel we're gonna make it. Baby, let your worries go. Live like the wind blows. Baby, let your worries go. I got faith in us, so don't stop now, 'cause I can feel we're gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Stop. I wanna go. Not gonna sleep till you're taking me home. Don't wanna stop, I wanna go. Not gonna sleep till you're taking me home. And I say, oh, oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it. Oh, mama, I'm gonna make it. Mama, I'm gonna make it.
Cool. And that reminded me of a question I had from earlier. The sails, I'm not really hip to the sails. Do you have control over that? You know, do you have tell me about the sails.
Yeah, so they, oh gosh, going back to the first recreational kayaking that kind of made the jump from Greenland to Victorian England and Europe had kayak sails on them, like the Rob Roy had a sail. And then as time went by, you know, kind of diversification, like specialized sea kayaking, recreational kayaking, surf versus river racing, that all kind of branched off into specialized tracks. In Tasmania in the 1970s, the sea kayakers were dealing with lots of wind, and they thought, well, instead of fighting it, let's use it to our advantage. So they made sails that, you know, they would just wrap around the mast and stick the whole thing in a hole kind of between the knees, just in the front of the deck. And then over time that evolved to somebody had the idea of using a tiller extender from a sailboat to make a hinge that would mount at the bow, and then running a line through like a little block, a little pulley up at the front, at the bow of the kayak, so that you could put the sail up. And the kind of sails that we use, you can sail for 45 degrees upwind as long as you're paddling. It's kind of like motor sailing. You don't have a keel, but your paddle grips the water with each stroke. And if you don't paddle, you can sail across the wind, but you'll drift down a little bit. And if you're sailing downwind and have the surf or the swell with you, oh my gosh, you can fly. So you can just link rides and link rides. On one crossing I did on our Pacific crossing, my former husband was in his sailboat and I was in the kayak, and we were side by side doing 7.5 knots for over an hour, because I was catching rides that would be like 10 knots with spray coming up the sides. And then just, you know, back off and catch the next ride, which there's no way I could have done without a sail. It was the most exhilarating day of my life on the water. So there are Australian-made sails. The guy who used to make them, Mick McRobb, passed away. And then some other folks took over from making it, which hasn't, in my opinion, been up to the same standard of quality. So I haven't found sails yet that were the same quality. I still have those sails from before he passed away, but we might be looking at making some. Yeah, and there's a few Australian sails that are out there on the market that are definitely passable too. It's good fun.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, if you like to play in the wind, sails will definitely increase that Yeah, I went from looking at a wind line on the horizon, like, oh no, there's a wind line, to there's a wind line.